It's been a day. It just, it's been a day. It's been a blessed day. It's been a highly productive day. But it's been a day. Um, Grabbing that. And, no, not that. Well, I do want that. So, let's restart that. All right. It's it's been a day. It's Hey, it was a productive one. I had two interviews. One was for a company called Undo Medical Debt, and they were talking about, that they have a not-for-profit organization that the only thing that they do is that they pay off medical debt. Now, what I found to be very interesting, didn't know this at the time, was that their ministry got started in 2014. It's not relevant to a whole lot of people. For me, it's kind of interesting because 2014 is also the year that I got started in this ministry. So, ministry that's been around for 11 years and something that helped me out directly. It was good stuff. We have the Wheel of Names going on here. And let's find out what we're going to talk about. Ooh, unforgiveness. Go ahead and grab that for the title screen. Save it. Saving that in the videos, the 13 traps, and how recently did we do unforgiveness? Oh, I'm gonna replace it because it's been a while. Unforgiveness. It is by far the most common bit of bitterness. And this, if you're familiar with anything that I have written, unforgiveness is the most common thing within bitterness that will guarantee you miss out on heaven if you keep hanging on to this. Again, for those who came in wondering, hey, what happened to you? Where were you? I had bus duty. I had to wait for a bus, and once the bus arrived, I realized I was waiting for the wrong bus, and I had to just stay there a little longer. It was interesting. I got to find out exactly how many kids get dropped off at that particular location, and none of them were the ones I was waiting on. Anywho, unforgiveness. How does unforgiveness hold you? How does unforgiveness hold you captive? How is unforgiveness? How or why is unforgiveness a thing of bitterness? And why does unforgiveness even start? The very first instance that we have of unforgiveness is Cain and Abel. They were given the task of presenting an offering. This offering had everything to do with giving the first fruits. Now, what's interesting to me is that on the one hand, I have so many people that are give me just one moment. I'm grabbing a link for somebody. There's so many individuals who are going on and on about how Cain obviously knew because he was taught by his parents. Then I have individuals who say, well, no, it's trial and error. Cain didn't know. Well, there is one thing that Cain did know. Cain knew that you're not supposed to kill people. Cain was the very first person to kill, and it was his own brother, his own flesh and blood. So why did Cain just go and kill Abel? Well, I'm going to say it's because of the serpent's seed. Not sure what you're not sure what I'm talking about? Let me show you. Over on Bible Gateway, and we're not going to use the NIV, but we're going to go to the Living Bible. Then Adam had sexual intercourse with Eve, his wife, and she conceived, gave birth to a son, Cain, meaning I have created. For as she said, with God's help, I have created a man. Her next child was his brother, Abel. Abel became a shepherd, while Cain was a farmer. At harvest time, Cain brought the Lord a gift of his farm produce, and Abel brought the fatty cuts of meat from his best lambs and presented them to the Lord. And the Lord accepted Abel's offering, but not Cain's. This made Cain both dejected and very angry, and his face grew dark with fury. Why are you angry? The Lord asked. Why is your face so dark with rage? It can be bright with joy if you do what you should. But if you refuse to obey, watch out. Sin is waiting to attack you, longing to destroy you, but you can conquer it. So many people do not focus on the fact that even while Cain was angry, God could still speak to him. God could not only speak to him, but Cain could hear. This is a concept that's not readily presented, not readily taught, not easily shared, no matter where we go. Cain could hear God speaking to him. And still, one day Cain suggested to his brother, let's go out into the fields. And while they were together, Cain attacked and killed his brother. But afterwards the Lord asked Cain, where is your brother? Where is Abel? How should I know? Cain retorted, am I supposed to keep track of him wherever he goes? But the Lord said, your brother's blood calls to me from the ground. What have you done? You are hereby banished from this ground, from which you have defiled with your brother's blood. No longer will it yield crops for you, even if you toil on it forever. From now on you will be a fugitive and a tramp upon the earth, wandering from place to place. Somebody asked me once, why didn't God just forgive Cain? And I said, because this is a thing of murder. Does God forgive murder? Yeah, he does. But he doesn't just forgive and then erase the consequence. And that's the thing. So many people hang on to unforgiveness because they think that if you forgive somebody, it's going to release them from having a consequence. Nothing could be further from the truth. And in fact, as I learned, as my wife learned, as very many people have learned, unforgiveness ties God's hands so that he cannot bring a consequence. So if a person is walking in unforgiveness, walking in holding a grudge, walking and just keep being bitter about what's going on, the consequence of the issue is on the person who will not forgive. And they get this idea, correctly so, that what they have been dealt with is somehow wrong and they shouldn't have to deal with it. So that part is easily felt by those who are withholding forgiveness. But they just keep on hanging on to unforgiveness. Why? Well, maybe it is because they haven't been told. Where God says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. But he can only give that vengeance if you forgive. He can only give that level of forgiveness, as he can only give that level of vengeance for you if you let it go. Now, last night I was talking about conditional forgiveness, which is another form of bitterness. Interesting it didn't come up tonight. But I just want to show you the 15 things that very many people hold others in unforgiveness about. And I'm just going to copy it into actually let's do a control Z and new window. Pull up my document. And I am looking for this one. "15 sections of for forgiving someone else." Or, oops, just realized I'm not sharing this screen. "15 places where unforgiveness thrives." All right. Number 1, where the hurt or trespass or disappointment first started. Okay, going to resize this because I don't need it quite that broad. There we go. Number 2, speaking about the person who hurt you all the time and continually rehashing how much it hurt. Refuse to change from the way that the hurt, trespass, or disappointment happened in the first place. 4. That person's thoughts are the worst. And if you remember why they did it, you can watch for patterns. 5. That person's reasoning thoughts was beyond effed up. Since it sucks so much, I'm going to remember it to watch for patterns. 6. They should know better than to keep such destructive habits when it comes to hurting me. How do they not know their own thought patterns? Alright. Number 7. And by the way, yes, I am copying this off of a document that I'm trying to work my way through, but 3 side hustles plus live stream. Gets a bit interesting. The words they used were hurtful. I'm going to use those words on them. See how they like it. Number 8. They probably said the words because their parents said it. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You know, if they didn't listen to such murderous songs or watch such terrible movies, they probably wouldn't be so hurtful. 10. I'm never going to forget the memory because that helps me watch for patterns. I'm never going to let their perspective get the better of me. I'm never going to let what their parents did be the motivating factor for why they should know better because God helps those who help themselves, or something like that. This is going to be more than it's going to be more than 15. Actually, I take it back. It's good that we're getting to the 15th. No matter how many people tell me that a Christian is always good, I'm pretty sure there was a demon who probably told them what to do, and I'll never forget how they were suckered. Number 14. They have the worst taste in music and movies. If they were to just improve on this, they might treat me better, but I'm not going to forgive. Number 15. I don't care how often they say I did it because that's what my parents did. If you can't stop yourself from repeating their old habits and stuff, you aren't worth being forgiven. Any of those hit any marks? Any of those hit any level of toes? This is just unforgiveness. This is just one of 15 parts. Does it sound like something that you might have struggled with? I don't think it'll fit into so unforgiveness, besides being detrimental, unforgiveness is like drinking a vial of poison hoping the other person is going to die. It doesn't work. Flat out, it don't work. So, what's the solve? Well, for starters, You gotta allow the debts of what other people have done not be what you look at. For example, I had probably the worst time being able to forgive my father. Now, I'm thankful right now. I'm thankful that God healed me from all of the wounds. I'm thankful that God healed me from all the different ways that I had never felt God's love in that area. But I can tell you, it took me consistently refusing to remember my father in the way that the hurt occurred. And that is probably the hardest thing about forgiveness. Forgiveness means, and now I'm not wiping tears because of tears. Forgiveness means you let go of how you felt when the hurt happened. Forgiveness means you let go of why. Forgiveness means you let go of the reality that what they thought about before they did it, yeah, that hurt. But forgiveness also means remembering that the action of hurt, the action of trespass, the action of disappointment happened because they were influenced and they agreed with something that is evil. What happened in your life is a result of someone listening to an evil influence and doing it. Now, here's the thing. The evil influence has existed on this earth for thousands of years. You and I haven't. As a result, they know exactly which buttons to push to get a person upset enough to do something that is hurtful, to do something that is disappointing, to do something that is crossing some boundaries, trespassing. They know exactly which buttons to push. And so if you are seeing everything that happens in your life as a result of a person, then you are not seeing things the way that Jesus does. Because Jesus says that we all came from one of two trees. We either came from the tree of Abraham or of the tree of knowledge, good and evil. You are either of your father Abraham or you are of your father the devil. You either come from the knowledge of life and how to do it, or you come from the knowledge of good and evil and how to do it. And here's the really messed up part. I don't know why my eyes keep watering up, but they do. Knowledge of good and evil does not mean that you will be able to only do good. It means you will do good and evil. So, Norm, how can I know that my actions that I want to do are actually of God. In the interview for the Christian podcast I did today, one of the questions that was asked was, "What would you say to all the witches and warlocks that they don't know why, or they want to know whether anything that they have experienced is real? What would you say to them?" And I said, "Oh, it's real. It's 100% real. However, I wouldn't go so far as to say that the things that a witch or warlock or Wiccan or something in that arena or genre, uh, I wouldn't go so far as to say that the entities are good, because when I was serving witchcraft, my masters told me what that I could do whatever I wanted, so long as it wasn't serving Christ. When I made Jesus my master, he said I could only do what was in his parameters. And that's where I saw the difference. And also, that's how I could see 100% whether something was of God or not. If what I'm doing in life is what I want to do, guess what? It's probably not godly. If what I'm doing in life is within the parameters of the Bible, guess what? It's probably godly. But if I am doing things within the parameters of the Bible how I want, now see, if we're going to be actual Christians, the way that Christian means little Christ-like one. If we are going to be little Christ-like ones here on the earth, then guess what? We best be Christ-like. So, how does Christ-like work in this thing called forgiveness? Well, I think the first part of it starts with this reference. Find my scripture. It's going to be in Matthew chapter 7, verse 11 and 12. Excuse me, verse 12. Do for others what you want them to do for you. This is the teaching of the laws of Moses in a nutshell. If you want to be forgiven, forgive. Going back a chapter, your heavenly Father, this is verses 14 and 15, your heavenly Father will forgive you if you forgive those who sin against you. But if you refuse to forgive them, he will not forgive you. Now here's where it gets interesting. While we were yet sinners comes from Romans 5. Is that the right? Yeah. Oh, the wrong verse. We, verse 6, when we were utterly helpless with no way of escape, Christ came at just the right time and died for us sinners who had no use for him. Even if we were good, we really wouldn't expect anyone to die for us, though, of course, that might be barely possible. But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. And since by his blood he did all this for us as sinners, how much more will he do for us now that he has declared us not guilty? A few things you need to know right off the bat. Blood is a currency. In the Old Testament, blood was the currency that was used to determine whether or not someone could be forgiven or not. But it wasn't really called forgiveness. It was called mercy. Because you went to give your altar at the mercy seat. So this whole thing about unforgiveness means you're not giving mercy. So each person who had Christ die for them before they even had any knowledge of what was going on. One moment, I got to adjust my mic. Making sure that the microphone, there it is, that the microphone can still pick me up, but I gotta be careful because I got some extra noise going on in the background and I don't want it to be picked up. So, the blood, you still see it highlighted there. Let's just go ahead and stop the share. The blood is what gave mercy from sin. But not so much a forgiveness. And if it was a forgiveness, it was just a forgiveness that lasted a year. It was not a forever forgiveness. And it's safe to say, in the physical, that unforgiveness has been on the earth longer than forgiveness has. From a physical standpoint only, unforgiveness has been on the earth longer than forgiveness has. But from a spiritual standpoint, since Jesus existed since before time began, and since Jesus is the payment for sin, and since Jesus forgave the entire world of their sin of being born into sin, since he forgave each person for that, then forgiveness has been on the earth for billions of years longer than unforgiveness has. So why would unforgiveness be such a strong push from the demonic? It's simple and terrifying at the same time. You see, if the demonic can keep you from forgiving, they can keep you in the same place that they are. Unforgiven. I will go so far as to say, and I'd love to have some discourse on this, but Unforgiveness, I have heard. I haven't found it in the Word of God, so I'm not going to go all out and say it's true. But unforgiveness is a demonic entity identity. Demonic entity identity. And with it being an entity that has an identity, it will speak what its identity is. And if you hear that identity speak, and you allow that identity to have strength, guess what? You have just agreed to an identity that's something other than God. Your ability to hear from God and to be able to understand what He is saying is therefore hampered, if not halted, altogether. So then, the ability of the individual to be able to walk this thing called life in a way that is following Christ, doing as Christ did. The ability for the individual to do that, guess what? It's going to be hindered. It's going to be stopped or interrupted. So additional beyond that, the person who claims that they are a follower of Christ, yet do not do what Christ did, guess what? Their salvation is in question. Since the kingdom of darkness knows exactly where you goofed, they know exactly where you messed up. Since they know all of that, guess what? They know when you are being Christ-like and when you aren't. If you have to say that you're a Christian, there's a high chance you're not. Jesus didn't have to go around announcing to everybody that he was God's son. He didn't have to start every conversation with, well, since I'm God's son, since I am the Son of God. He didn't do that. So, how is it that we have so many individuals, and I know I've strayed off topic a little bit. It's based off of something that I was reading on Instagram's threads. How is it that we have this perspective of how much we say we're a Christian if we're not able to forgive those who somehow present a way that we don't like, somehow present a way that we don't believe, somehow present a way that we don't believe is the correct way, How many individuals have you found willing to say, you know what? I'm going to forgive you for believing that way. And I'm just going to give you over to Jesus and ask him to be your best friend. How many do you find saying that? I haven't found a single one. I've been teaching I've been teaching about this thing called uh, traps of bitterness. Been teaching on it since March 2023. Actually, April 2023. I've been talking about this since April 2023. A little over a year. Almost two. Excuse me, almost 2 years. Almost 2 years I've been talking about this thing of bitterness. And almost 2 years I've been talking about how I don't see people say, you know what? Your belief is different from mine. It's not what I'm think. It's not how I'm believing, and I'm not going to say that you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. Let God be right and everybody else a liar. I haven't seen anyone write it. I've heard a few people say it, but I've not heard anyone write it. Why don't they? Do they have some type of bitterness against God for creating such a stiff standard? Said some tough questions. And now, Q&A is open for any topic. I think I can turn my volume back up. The level of noise I thought was going to be coming into the building did not come into the building, so any topic you want to talk about, bring it on. Checking. And now we wait. Anything happening interesting in the peanut galleries world? Wow, so interesting. Can you pass me one of them water jugs, please? I thought you was gonna bring it across the bed. No questions. Another question that the person on the podcast had asked me was, is it possible for a person to sell their soul to the devil? And I gave a much longer answer than what I'm going to give right now, but the answer I gave them was that it's possible to splinter and trade on altars, and that trade in turn becomes something that holds the soul hostage, but it's the person who does it, not a spiritual entity. And that really that really puts a scenario where the person was like, "Whoa, I've never heard it like that," you know. And I said, it says in First Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 23 that spouses have been on the earth since Genesis 6. Now, even while the Nephilim were wiped out by the flood, giants were not, because the spirit spouses existed while the Nephilim got wiped out. Which means that the wives of Ham, Shem, and Japheth weren't pure. Which means that the gene for the giant carried on in their body. Which means that even while Noah and his family were found to be righteous before God, the wives weren't. May as well go ahead and pour me some water, yeah. So, the Nephilim, they created half human, half other. They are the reason for the fish that looks like well, I'll just show this picture, this screen. They're responsible. The mixing of humans and fish has to do with these odd fish. Not that fish. All of these fish, not that person, but all of these fish are direct mutations off of Nephilim. All of these fish also are proof that the mermaids were able to procreate. They weren't able to keep their main gene of mermaid, but they were able to procreate. Yeah. Yeah. So, this whole concept of the individual who focuses on the friction and the fact that there is friction and not what is causing the friction is the person who does not want to be free. And for about 38 of my 40 years, I didn't want to be free. I mean, I did. I didn't want to always be doing that sexual act with myself. And here's the thing. I told so many people, I have told so many people that I am blessed to not be someone who was sexually molested. But then I discovered, because Holy Spirit set me straight 2 days ago, and it's been a harsh revelation to swallow. Guess what? Every person who masturbates has sexually molested themselves. Every person who masturbates and inserts sexual objects or interacts with objects have assaulted themselves. Because it's definitely not within God's design to do that. So if it's not within God's design, and you were doing things with the temple of God that it was never designed to do, never designed to have that type of interaction with. You were trading on the trading floor of hell against God, against heaven, actively engaging with the demonic entities of hell. You're going to have arguments. All of those topics and all their disagreements and everything that's happening is going to show up. So the shacking up certainly had plenty to do with why there was disagreement. But the shacking up is not the foundation of it. The shacking up is the self-pleasure. And I can count on one hand how many people I have met that have not done any action of self-pleasure on themselves at any time. Because, first of all, they were taught by their parents what it was. And they loved God more than they loved sin. Simple. They were taught, and they loved God more. In the book of John, the Gospel of John, John is known as the beloved disciple. He is not the beloved disciple because of a level of love that he had for Jesus. Rather, he's called the beloved disciple because he loved God and hated sin exactly as Jesus did. Why else would Jesus call him the beloved, the disciple whom Jesus loved? And if you read the books of John, you will find that there is so much focus on hating sin. There's an overabundance of hating sin. There's an overabundance on the fact that if you are not having fellowship fellowship with your brother or sister, it's because you hate them. Harsh, I know. So we are either going to hate sin or we're going to hate people. If you hate people, Jesus calls it murder. So what's the solution? Solution? Love God, keep his commands. Because there's this thing. I don't know if you've ever seen it. On the basis of I was teaching on this some months ago. It's in First John chapter 2. My little children, I am telling you this so that you will stay away from sin. But if you sin, there is someone to plead for you before the Father. His name is Jesus Christ, the one who is all that is good and who pleases God completely. He is the one who took God's wrath against our sins upon himself, and brought us into fellowship with God, and he is the forgiveness for our sins, and not only ours, but also the world's. And how can we be sure that we belong to him? By looking within ourselves. Are we really trying to do what he wants us to do? Verses 4 through 6. Someone may say, I am a Christian. I am on my way to heaven. I belong to Christ. But if he doesn't do what Christ tells him to do, he is a liar. But those who do what Christ tells them to will learn to love God more and more. That is the way to know whether or not you are a Christian. Anyone who says he is a Christian should live as Christ did. That's the basis. So anyone who says that they are a Christian, the measure for a Christian is not other Christians. The measure for a Christian is Christ.